just so we can empower all other girls out there. Our main goal is to make every girl, especially every Ghanaian and African girl, feel like whatever dream she has is possible. When she looks at tag, she should know that her biggest and wildest dreams are valid and
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrew. Welcome to Paystack Developer Workshop. With me on the call is Ibukun, and we are both from the Developer Relations team, where we help developers succeed, build, and succeed with Paystack APIs. So if you can use the chat at the bottom right to introduce yourselves and say where you're from, be happy. So I'm Andrew, I'm dialing in from Nairobi. Ibukun, where are you dialing in from?
Hi guys, I'm Ibuko, dialing in from Lagos, Nigeria.
Awesome. Welcome, Bahrath. Welcome, Monne from Port Elizabeth, South Africa. Welcome, everybody. Yeah. So just to get you, in case you're not familiar with the platform, we have the chat box, and right next to it, we have the questions tab where you can enter a question and we'll answer it live. You can also upvote a question that you'd like that somebody else has asked, and it will be popped up to the top of the queue. So please use the questions tab for your questions or any complaints or anything, and then the chat is for general catching up. Welcome Kingsley, welcome Michael, Ademola, welcome Nigeria from everybody. Quayum or Ibrahim, welcome everybody. So yeah, real quickly, what are developer workshops for? So the developer workshops are practical sessions where we go through code, documentation, and sample apps, just to help you understand concepts that may not be very clear on from our documentation and other resources we have online. And then the second thing is that you get to voice your questions directly to us on anything that is unclear or anything that you are stuck on. Like Bahrath says, he has an issue with subscription. So this is his opportunity to put it down in the questions tab, and we will also answer that. So for this workshop, we're focusing on adding payments to your Android applications. So we are using, we'll be using our sample app called the FoodCheckout app, and I will take you through how to set it up just real quickly. And then after that, we'll set up Paystack, and then we'll enable app notifications using webhooks. And then we'll go through a demo of all of this together and open up the floor for Q&A. So as Ibukun has dropped, excuse me, in order to benefit from this session very well, Ibukun has dropped the sample app we'll be using. You can go ahead and clone it or just follow along as we talk. He'll also post the guide we are using. So this sample app was built alongside a guide to help you see how to use Paystack SDK on your Android applications, which is dropped right there. So real quickly, let's get started with the accepting payments on an Android app. So our FoodCheckout app, FoodCheckout app is a basic app built on Android using Java, but we also have a component of it in Kotlin. And so we will be, for those of you not familiar with Java, you could check out the Kotlin branch on GitHub. For this presentation, I'll be using the Java. So let me start sharing my screen. Give me 1 second so that we can go through the, I'll be opening my code editor and at the same time, the browser, the guide. 1 second. Cool. So let's restart all of this. So welcome to the FoodCheckout app. It's a very basic picture restaurant, and this is our restaurant, so we are calling it the workshop restaurant. We only have one item on the menu, fortunately or unfortunately, which is a cheeseburger that looks very tasty, and it costs 4,000 naira. So from the guide, right? When you get started with the guide, you'll go through setting up the project, which means, putting all the step-by-step, putting things together, including the menus, including the text, setting up the styling and all of that. For this session, we won't focus on that. Instead, we will skip down to installing the SDK. So the Paystack SDK, this is the official way to collect cards, to build custom payment solutions, while custom card collection, card payment solutions. So in case you don't want to use Paystack checkout, use the Android SDK to collect card details. Right now it supports card, and it is PCI compliant, meaning that customers' cards are encrypted before being sent to the servers. So the first thing we do when we're installing the SDK is we go to our build.gradle file and add it into our dependencies. And this is how it looks when you first download the application. So one thing to remember is that at the time of the documentation of this being written, the latest was 3.12, but when we check the releases, we have the latest is 3.32. So the first thing to do in order to get the best out of this is to update the dependencies and then build the application. So going back to the guide, so once that is built, then we will do Java 1.8, and so you'll find that as well in the compile options. And then now we want to configure our Paystack public key. So the Paystack public key is what is used for client-facing applications. So think of it. So the public key can be used on your front end. So when you're doing inline, Paystack inline, or Paystack JS, and then on your backend, whenever you're doing direct server, so when you're hitting Paystack API, you use your secret key. So one thing to do is to try and secure your keys, keep them separate, keep them secure. And the best way to do that is to not check them into your code base. Do not check them into Git, especially if you're having a public repository. I'll pause here and just ask if there's anything that's not clear so far, and let me know. Okay, no direct questions at the moment. Okay, cool. Let's proceed. Let me share my screen and switch to the guide. Apologies for that. So, so we come to the, so how we recommend, or the way we feel the Paystack public key should be stored is in your gradle.properties file, and you do not check it into GitHub, into your Git. So you make sure gradle.properties is included as part of your git ignore files. And then we come to the build config and declare it here as PSTK public key. Again, we're using the public key and not the secret key because the public key is what we use in the front of the front-facing applications. So whether it's your website or your mobile app, and that's because it doesn't have too many permissions. Aside from that, your secret key, you use it direct server to server when you're hitting the Paystack API. All right. So we come to our second activity. So our main activity here is just the burger menu and the button to go to the next activity where payments will happen. Again, our restaurant is very small, so we only have burgers and fries. Cool. So now we have the checkout activity. So if you're following along, the checkout activity is now what has our custom checkout experience. So where customers will enter their card details, and then we will charge them. We'll use the Paystack SDK to charge the card. And so using the guide again, we'll enable, before we do that, we enable the internet permissions. That's because the SDK needs to communicate over the internet to Paystack servers. So make sure you do that on your Android manifest file, which is declared here. So we declared the internet permission, and then back to our checkout activity. So all these, the custom layouts, the colors and the fonts we've already done them in previous steps, right? So you can change all of these according to your tastes. And again, this repository, the project is on our Paystack OSS, free to use, free to modify and have fun with it and explore. So good. So the first thing we do is we call the initialize Paystack function. And what this function does is it initializes the SDK, and then it sets the public key. Again, you notice we're using the public key as a config variable. So please ensure you don't store your keys on your code repos, on your code repos, right? And then from there now we start initializing the form. So we're taking these and giving them variables, which is these functions right here. Then after that, this is an interesting function right here that was written here. And what it does is that when somebody enters their card details, so their card expiry, so 12, let's say 24, it appends the / here. And this is not only good UX, but also it'll come in handy just down below in the next few steps, right? So we've set that up, and then we are binding the on-click listener to our perform charge function. So we are binding the buttons on-click listener to the perform charge function. So what does the perform charge do? Perform charge is getting the values of the input fields. So for this we can use, let's start using it now step by step. So I'll go and fetch one of our test card details. You can find our test details right here in our documentation, payments, test payments. So we'll just use this one with no validation, click copy, and it should be pasted. So 4081, 4081. Then when a customer enters the month and year, we've appended the /, so that becomes the card expiry. And then the CVV for this is 408. So we just enter 408, 408. Cool. Now, remember this / we said we've appended here. It does two things. Number one, it's good user experience such that as your customer is entering these details, they don't have to also look for where / is and then come back to their numbers. But number two, because the SDK, Paystack SDK requires the month and the year separated as integers. So what we're doing here is that we are splitting the string of card expiry into month and integer, and we're using the / as the what do we call it, demarker, or as the character where we'll split these two. So we get the expiry month delimiter, I think, or whatever. Yeah, well, so we're using the / to split the string into two arrays in simple English, and then we are passing these values into integers because the SDK expects integers. All right. Then the amount is static, is being gotten from our main activity right here, which we set here. And so no need to input the amount. But one important thing here is that amounts on Paystack are in the lowest currency unit. So that means you multiply the amount by 100. So if you're charging in Naira, as we are doing here, it's in kobo. If you're charging in shillings, it's in cents. If it's rand, in cents. If it's cedis, it's pesos. So always remember to multiply amounts by 100. Otherwise, you might send us 4,000, or like we're doing here, we've set it at 4,000, and then we'll charge 40 naira, and you'll be wondering, where did that come from? It's because you did not multiply it by 100. You did not convert it to the lowest currency unit. All right, cool. So I'll pause there just a little and then switch back to our guide, right? And so what have I just shown? I've shown us how to initialize Paystack. I've shown us the initializing the form variables as well. And then now we are on performing the charge here. So we've paused right here on the converting the amount to the lowest currency unit. For those of you following the guide, I hope we are all clear thus far. I'll pause just a little bit to see whether there's anything you guys need help with. So Ibrahim is asking, will this meeting be uploaded? Yes, it will. Yes, it will be uploaded, and you'll receive even an email with it afterwards. We'll also send another follow-up email with the slides and the YouTube link. So yeah. Morne, please excuse me for if I mispronounce your name, Morne. Is there a specific API for Xamarin? Not really. Not really. I think Xamarin is a C-based mobile app. I'm not sure, but I don't think there's a specific API. The logic remains the same throughout. So yeah, I don't think, not really. Cool. So back to the guide. Give me 1 second to switch over. All right. So cool. So we are still charging. We still haven't charged the customer yet. What we've done is we've collected the card number. We've split the card expiry field into month and year. And then we've also multiplied the amount by 100 by converting it to the so I will convert it to the lowest currency unit. So now we create a new charge, and the charge. Well, before we create a new charge, apologies. We need to validate these card details. So I told myself we'll do it, but I didn't do it. So I'll just show you from the SDK. What some of the methods for validating the card details are. So you can validate the number, the CVV, the expiry date, as well as the entire card if it's valid. The reason why this is important is for, number one, you don't want your transaction rates, your success rates to drop because of user inputs. So you validate them before the SDK is able to validate them even before you hit the Paystack API. So that is the main thing. It's very important to validate the card before you send it to the Paystack API. This is something that is missing from our sample app. And if you're willing, please submit a PR to fix this for us. I've left a to-do there for asking for help. But it's a very simple call. Even when you look at this, it's just card is valid. So after you set the new card, you just check whether the card is valid. And the second thing, these granular checks help by highlighting the exact thing that is wrong. So if the number is wrong, you can change the status of this to a red to highlight that the card number is not right. And the SDK can also check that for you, but the UI won't be as beautiful as what you have. So let me just show you an example. So I've removed 1 digit from the card, and let me try paying. You see, yeah, please provide valid. So this is what comes inbuilt with the SDK. But you should always, if you want to avoid this, you can use the validate checks and highlight the input field correctly. Cool. So now we are ready to charge the card. You'll notice there's the set currency field here. This is important because in cases you're not using the Naira, if you want to charge in CDs, dollars, and all of that, you have to set the currency. So the SDK defaults to Naira if you don't set the currency. So for me, I've put Kenya shillings because I'm using my Kenyan API keys, my public API key for this demo. Cool. So then now we have the charge card function and a series of callbacks. So it takes the charge object and then it also provides us with a series of callbacks. So the success callback is called when the transaction succeeds. Pretty straightforward. For us, what we've done, we've added a method for displaying the transaction reference as a toast message. So payment successful, and then we append the transaction reference here. And we are getting the transaction reference from the transaction object and the get reference method, which is all inbuilt in the SDK. Then we also have the before validate. This is a callback that's called when the transaction requires an extra validation input or an extra authentication input. So after they've put in, card details and the CVV and the expiry date, some cards require maybe an OTP. So the before validate is triggered here, and it will load the right input fields that are required. And then the on error callback is just for when transactions run into an error. So with that, I think we're ready to charge this card. So we've corrected the input, we've put in our details and continue. Corrected that. And so let's pay. Oh, payment successful. Okay. I don't know why. 408. Let me do that one last time. Continue 408. Oh, okay. It doesn't update this field. That's why. And when we do an enter, payment successful. You can see here the toast message right down there, the white toast message. And so that's how we have integrated the SDK and made a successful payment. Pause here for a short break and see what questions we have. Cool. Welcome, Divine. Welcome, Divine. All right, no pending questions. I see more joiners here have joined us. So just for those who have just joined us, we have the chat box where you can introduce yourself and tell us where you're dialing from. And then we also have the question box where if you have any questions you need answered directly, we are more than happy to answer them, and you can upvote any other question that somebody else has asked. Awesome. Moving on to the next space section. Oh, we just hit the break. So now we are coming to enabling app notifications. Cool. So we have two problems currently with the current setup. The first thing, we as the restaurant need to know when a payment is completed. Then the second thing, we need to update the right customer or the app that a payment has been, their payment has been received. The toast is not always enough. As you've seen, it is very small and disappears very quickly. So, and in case we have other things happening, we need to set notifications. Oh, Kingsley is asking, what do we mean by success rates? Success rates mean the number of transactions that succeed divided by the total number of transactions you've had. We'll post something there. So cool. So we're in the next phase where we need to know when a payment is completed, us as the restaurant, so we can begin processing the order. And then we also need to update the customer that their payment has been received and the order is being processed. two problems, and the first problem will be solved by webhooks. So what are webhooks? Webhooks are automated messages or information across different apps. So think of it as two different systems working together. So I got this from Zapier, and Zapier usually joins two disparate systems together using something they call zaps. And so the difference between webhooks and API calls, like making direct API calls, is that webhooks are automated and they are triggered by something. So if a transaction succeeds, boom, send a webhook. If an invoice, if a transfer succeeds, or if a transfer fails, send an invoice. Send a webhook. The reason being, we want to notify, these systems want to notify each other of what is going on, right? And so from our documentation, this is an image taken from our documentation. So without webhooks, your server on the right, so our server, the restaurant server, would have to keep asking Paystack, do we have any successful transaction? And Paystack will be like, nah, not yet. And then we keep checking, and we have to build out that logic. We have to build out the logic for, okay, when we receive a yes, we stop checking Paystack. So that is a lot of engineering resources set on asking Paystack for when this transaction will succeed. Meanwhile, with webhooks, we tell Paystack to charge. We've sent Paystack the charge details, the card details. When Paystack is done charging, it returns an update, a webhook event saying, hey, we've successfully charged this card. You can provide value. And that is what webhooks are. We have a webinar for webhooks we covered sometime last year. You can check it out on our YouTube channel. So let's pause here, and then let me just take you through user flow, right? Let's say we are successful. We have two apps. We have all these customers, Angie, Brian, and Clarice. And so one of them make a payment. So let's say Clarice makes a payment to Paystack using either card, mobile money, EFT, bank transfer, whichever way, right? Paystack will send a webhook event to our fast checkout server. Our fast checkout server needs to update the right person and tell them, hey, we received your payment. So how do we do that? This is where we go to Firebase. So Firebase is a efficient way to send notifications to your application. So it provides the connection between your server and the application. So I've seen Oluwatobi saying he's a Node.js engineer, and so we will switch to Firebase, and we'll now switch to working on the notification aspect, but we'll start by setting up our Android app. So on our Android, the end goal is the picture you see on the right. So after a successful transaction, we tell the customer we're preparing your order and this is your reference. Instead of the toast, now they receive a notification on their notification bar. The next level of doing that is to create in-app notifications, but we won't cover that here. So how do we do this? Let me share my screen. Give me 1 second. All right. So the first thing, you create your Firebase account and go to console, and then you create your first project. Now, this first project will have credentials, which is what I won't show right now, but we will switch over to our repo and I'll show you how that looks like. So adding Google services, adding credentials on the app implementation, and then building this notification service, the one that appears up here, is what I'll show you. So once you've created your project on Firebase, you'll get the credentials and then you'll add them to your app, as I will show you in a minute. Boom. So let me open my terminal. I'll switch to feeds, add Firebase. So this is the branch. Okay, check out. This is the branch that has so this is the branch that has this is a feature branch that has Firebase notifications enabled. So I want us to go and check it out. And I'll just walk you real quickly through the implementation for Firebase. Cool. So let's just build this real fast. Because I'd already done this, so I just need to rebuild the app, and it will pick up the new changes. And restart and reinstall. Great. So our app loads again. This time you've seen it's now loading in Kenya shillings. That's because, as I had said, I'm using Kenya shillings as API keys, right? Yeah, sorry, I'm using a Kenya business's API keys. That should be the correct English. So the first thing after we've gotten we've built our project on Firebase is to add the credentials. So I won't show that here, but we'll add them in our build.gradle files, and then we also import the Google Messenger services. We also import the Firebase messaging service. So Firebase Messenger package, sorry, I should call it package, not service. And then the most important thing is to build the Firebase messaging service. So this is the service that listens to notifications from Firebase. And so what we have is that it will read the message, and then it log. So here, what we're doing is we are logging the messages, and if the message size is greater than 0, we can now display the data. We can get the data, and then from there we can now set the notification. So this remote get notification is not null, is what sends the notification. To design our messaging service, we put it somewhere here. It's somewhere here. I can't see it right now. The other thing, the important thing to mention is that you also should declare it in your Android manifest as a service, making sure that the name here matches the class name here, and then also it's using the messaging events package. The reason for that is so that the app knows it's tied to the notification bar up here. The thing with this service right now is that so in the previous application, or in the previous branch, the notification was just a toast. But now this one will come as a notification on the notification bar up here. And so we've set it up. Then we add our dependencies, our Firebase BOM and Firebase messaging as our dependencies. We also add, we update the SDK versions, because I think Google Play services nowadays, Google services nowadays is supporting, I think, from 31. We've updated to 34, and then we also include the Google services. And then come back, and in our main activity, in our main activity, remember it was just having a button and then tied the on-click listener to this. We have this, the registration token. So what we are doing is, for every installation of our app, Firebase generates a token. So that is how Firebase is able to identify which app the notification belongs to. And we will see this token comes in handy in the next in the next phase. So in our server, the token comes in handy in our server. So all we're doing here is we're getting the token, and once we have it, we are just logging it here. So we are logging it in our tags, and we are logging it as a toast. So when the app launches, you'll notice a toast here with some text. So this is it. This is our Firebase token. So in production, don't do this. It will scare people. People feel like the app is broken. But you can store it in your DB and tie it to the customer's email. That way you're able to identify by email or by token which customer has paid. The second thing is that these tokens expire. So you need to also have they expire in case the customer uninstalls the app and then reinstalls it, a new token will be generated. So you need to keep track of that. And Firebase has some awesome documentation on how to refresh the token. So at this stage, so we have our token, we've installed Firebase on our app, but we don't have webhooks. We haven't set up webhooks. And so now we'll switch to our server and set Firebase and set up Firebase there. Let me just change slides. Cool. So now we've set up Firebase on our Android. We're getting the token, the Firebase token, to identify the installation. And now we want to set it up on our server. Let me pause here real quickly and answer some of the questions here. Let's see. Ademola is asking, can I accept payments from different sources like USSD, POS terminal, Android app, e-commerce, bank transfer through Paystack? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. All of those are possible. We were at the beginning of the call, we played the terminal video. This right now is a demo on Android. USSD, we have 737 USSD. We have several USSD channels supported in Nigeria. Bank transfer as well is a Nigeria centric payment channel. So yes, you can accept payments on all those channels into the same dashboard, or you can set up several businesses across Paystack. Oluwatobi is asking, does Paystack accept international payments like Stripe? Yes, we support international payments. That means, so for certain markets like Nigeria and Kenya, you're able to charge in US dollar and get settled in US dollars. But you can also charge international cards. That means cards that are based in let's say the US, you're able to charge them and get your Naira or your CD. So for like Ghana, for markets where we don't support USD settlements and collections, like Ghana and South Africa, you can still charge an international card, an American card, for example, and but it will only be converted by the banks and then settled you in your local currency. So for Nigeria and Kenya, you can charge dollars and receive dollars directly. I hope that answers your question. And Ibukun will also drop more articles on the chat just to help you read along from our help desk. Cool. So we now go to our server. We'll transition real quickly to our server, where we will we will import and install our Firebase admin. This is the SDK, and then download our Firebase credentials from the console, and then initialize Firebase and send a message to Firebase. And this message will be triggered by Paystack webhooks. Cool. Let me share my screen again. So this is our Android. And now we are on our Node application. Let me switch these up like that. All right. So this is just a simple Node app. It doesn't have too much. It's just setting up, running on Express, has a .env. and everything else. For this one, we even have a way to initialize a transaction from your back end. So if you want to initialize your transaction from the back end, you can do that through this. One thing I will mention is that the Paystack API, when you're initializing through the backend, you use your secret key. I've commented this out for now because we're not using it for we're not initializing a transaction on the backend for now. But I just wanted to highlight that. So remember, in the front end, we were using the what's it called? The public key. So now on the back end, on the server, so on the mobile app, we're using public key. On the server, we're using secret key. And then again, you notice it's not in the code directly, but rather in environment variables. So we've even this repository, the sample node app, also has examples of environment variables and how to put them, right? So we have the Paystack secret key and then the Firebase cloud management secret key. I've put the example files there because those ones will we'll commit them to the repository, but the real ones are, you can see they're blocked out, so they will never get my local host, which is the best way to do it. They'll never leave my local host for now, which is the securest way to do it. So never ever check any of your API keys into public repositories. Cool. So first things first, npm install Firebase admin. That's the Firebase SDK. And then you import it into your project. Then you download your service account key from the Firebase console. So when you go to FCM, there's a process on how to download this key. There's also a guide that Ibukun has shared on how to go about it. But how it looks like at the end of when you've downloaded it, you should end up with a JSON file like this. So it says type of service, project ID. It has the private key and then PGP key. So it works with private and public key, whatever. And then all these authentications and all of that belong to Google. So you should end up with a file like that when you've downloaded it. So you import it. So you import the file and we've given it a variable called service account. And then now we initialize and connect. So initialize Firebase and connect using the keys, using the service account key here. We connect to our instance, our Firebase instance. Nice. So here is where we have the webhook event endpoint. So this endpoint receives Paystack webhooks. And the first thing it does, and this is very recommended, is to verify and validate that the webhook is coming from Paystack. This is because you don't want bad actors faking transactions on your servers, on your systems. So looking at the code, so what happens is that we create a SHA-512 HMAC header with using the secret key, and then we encode the JSON body with that. We encode the request body with that, and then we generate a hash. After we've generated a hash, we check it against the Paystack signature header. So all Paystack events or webhooks come with an Paystack signature. So these two values should match. They should match. The second level of verification we should do, allow me to switch to our webhooks documentation, is to IP whitelisting as well, which we haven't covered there. But IP whitelisting as well is securing your webhook endpoint. And these are the three APIs, three IPs Paystack calls you from. These are the only IPs that should be hitting your webhook event, your webhook endpoint. And so we haven't implemented that here. So I should also leave another to do. For those of you willing to contribute to open source, IP whitelisting. Yeah. So if it fails the hash, we send a 400, not allowed. And then so this means, yeah, we close that off. And then if it's successful, we fetch the reference, the transaction reference. And then now we send notification. We send the reference to Firebase. So this is the notification function that implements Firebase. So we'll get to that. Before we get to sending notifications, how about we set up the webhooks? So I've started my server here. So it's just a simple node npm start, and the server is running. And then so localhost is not accessible over the public internet. That is very true. So the first thing we need to expose this endpoint, our localhost, our local server, to the internet. And how we do that is we use ngrok or grok, and we pass the port we want to expose. And so this creates a public URL, this HTTPS, which we'll use now on our dashboard to tell Paystack where to send those webhook events. So we take the ngrok values, we come to our Paystack dashboard, and then we paste them right here on our test webhook URL. Because we're using test keys, we paste them here, and then we save the changes. Boom, successfully updated. So now this URL is accessible via the internet, and now Paystack can send us webhook events for successful transactions. So let's switch back to our mobile app, all right, and run one transaction. So this time we're running it in Kenya shillings. We'll use the same test cards. So our test cards are not currency bound, so you can use as long as you're using them in the test with your test API keys, you can use any currency, and yeah, but they cannot be used on live using your live API keys. So paste that. Any date in the future, 12/24. Oops, delete one. 12/24, and then the CVV is 408. Let me click on pay. Payment successful. Then we leave the app. Excuse me, because it's not it's not an in-app notification. We have to leave the app. And now, excuse me, just give me 1 second. Let me let me hydrate. Excuse me. Let me pause here for a few questions. Let me see if there are any questions for me here, as I just catch my breath a little bit. John is asking, does Paystack allow payment from Sierra Leone? I am not sure, to be honest. John, maybe do you mean that cards issued from Sierra Leone, or do you mean are you allowed to open a Paystack account when your business is based in Sierra Leone? To be clear, we excuse me. Just add a bit of context, and then I'll be able to answer. Give me one. All right, cool. Now we are back with hey. Apologies. All right, cool. So we're back to our server. Let's take a look at our send notification function. So this is what implements or sends now notifications from to Firebase, and then Firebase sends it to the right app. So you remember at the beginning on our Android app, this function where we were logging the registration token. This is where it comes in handy. So we have in our environment variable, we've just added a registration token here. We've copied the one from this app and added it here. But the best way to do it would be to save the tokens in your DB and then maybe tie them to the user so that you know user Andrew at example.com owns this token, and that way you can fetch the token from based on their email or whichever user identification. For now, we're just using the environment variable. And then this is the message we are sending. So we've said, okay, we are preparing your order. We've set the title as preparing your order. And then the body, we are passing the reference, the transaction reference we got from the webhook event from Paystack. And so we append that. This is called interpolation. And then we also add the token, which is the registration token. So the device or the app, the token that identifies the app or the device we're sending to. And then we trigger Firebase messaging, send the message. When successful, we are logging that here. In case of an error, we're also logging it. Cool. So let's do one last transaction and you'll see this. Actually, we can even change something here so that we see it live. So the notification for the last transaction came in here, TRX, LA, blah, like that. We can say, can do something cool here and say, your burger is on the way. Is coming. And then come back to our app and trigger another transaction. 408 12 4, and then 408 again. Submit that. Payment successful. Exit the app because this is not, we haven't implemented in-app notifications, but that's something else we can do. And whoever does it is there. Oh, it's still saying preparing your order. I know why. It's because we didn't restart the server. So let's do that. No, it's not part of me. So we restarted the server. This time the burger should be coming. Let's clear this. Load the app, trigger another transaction, payment successful, exit the app. It sent the message, and here we go. Your burger is coming, and there's a transaction reference. So that's the end for me. Opening the floor for questions. Happy to get any questions. Yeah, that's it from me. Anything that wasn't clear, anything you'd like us to discuss that we didn't discuss, happy to hear from you. That aside, so we will upload all of this is available on the Paystack OSS repo as Yobukun has shared here. We'll also upload a video on our YouTube channel, and yeah, we're so glad to have you guys here. Thank you so much for joining us on this presentation. Truly look forward to the amazing apps you guys are going to build, and I hope this has been really helpful. Until next time, see you in the next one. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.